You're listening to The Bounding Box, where we talk about web development, geo development, and everything in between. All right, welcome to The Bounding Box. Today, I'm joined by a great guest here. A special guest because he was on the very first Bounding Box podcast. I have Chris Whitmore. Chris, please introduce yourself, tell us who you are, what you do, what's your problem?
Thank you, Renee. Yeah, I remember that. It's been a while. It's super excited to be back. And my problem is that it took this long to get on here as a solo guest after the first round. But really excited to be here. My name's Chris Whitmore. I'm the lead product engineer for MapViewer, but I'm also a product engineer for ArcGIS Online overall, and I kind of fill many roles and many hats and everything as many others do. And so it's kind of like work on everything from the software to documentation to engaging with users and all of that. Super exciting stuff.
You are like the go-to guy, Chris, because every time something comes up, it's like, oh, you should hit Chris Whitmore. He'll have a better answer. Chris is the guy you want to talk to, man. They do okay,
Well,
but yeah.
that's probably because they're busy. Or like, go ask Chris. But you be here, you work long enough, and you kind of accumulate all the little bits of knowledge that really kind of make a product come together and flow.
Yeah, exactly. You start getting all those like little questions and stuff that are like, someone told me you worked on this one thing a while ago. Do you have any insight on how that works? Or I'm looking into it. Those kind of questions pop up all the time.
Yeah. And the biggest thing about all that is like, as we're really kind of growing into a gigantic team, a gigantic company, is like knowing who that person is that might be the subject matter expert or can ask a question without a huge email trail or
Yeah.
or just kind of a lot of back and forth. And, it's kind of an invaluable skill or an invaluable kind of knowledge base.
So how'd you get your start at Esri, Chris? You've been at Esri for a while, right?
18 years.
Wow, 18 years, man.
Yeah. So it's interesting and it's fascinating. I never thought I would end up in software development because, I started off in undergrad in engineering, mechanical engineering, and I kind of didn't like the course load. I liked a lot of the topics, but it just wasn't for me at the time. And so I transitioned to computer science and kind of the same thing. I would write code and do great with writing the code, but I just didn't really like the curriculum of the courses and stuff. And, so I finally kind of thought about what I really wanted, and my grades were suffering because I wasn't really interested in what I was doing, and so I took some courses over the summer to improve my grades, and one of those was an intro geography class, and I just fell in love right there. And so at that point, I didn't know anything about GIS. I was just like, you know what, I'm going to do geography. That's what I really like to do, and whatever happens in my career after that, it's going to happen. I'm just going to do what I want to do, and then I discovered GIS out of that, and I was like, hey, this is awesome. And then so fast forward 18 years, it's something where I'm back in kind of a computer science, kind of GIS, geography blend of everything. And that's ended up being the kind of the perfect balance of, kind of what I like, what my skills are, and,
Yep.
what, my education and experience has kind of grown into.
Nice. That's amazing how you could take a geography degree. I got the same degree. I got a geography degree. You take that degree and it just like, can blossom into something else, right? Like that you never even thought you'd be working on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And Esri is such a great place in the sense like we have English majors, we have biology majors, we have chemistry majors, whether they kind of end up as developers from a coding boot camp, switching careers later, whatever.
Yep.
It's just kind of a melting pot of backgrounds.
Was Esri your first job at a school? Why is your first like big job at a school?
Yeah. It's this is kind of a wild story. So I got my graduate degree in geography afterwards. I kind of want to keep on going. And if you have a geography degree, you have to kind of keep on progressing rather than just walk away with a bachelor's.
Yeah.
Uh, so I was applying around, and I applied to Esri, not really thinking that I would get anywhere. Hey, Esri's kind of the big kid on the block. That's who you would really want to apply for if you can. So I kind of just peppered everywhere, as much as I could. And so Esri flew me out for installation and release. So nothing to geography related, nothing GIS related, just hardcore working on setups. And I was like, hey, that's great. I love an opportunity, foot in the door, wonderful. So I came out for an interview. And then after I came back after the interview, they said, hey, we loved you, but we've already filled the role. Sorry. And I was like, oh, man. And they're like, but we might have another role. And there was, on the installation team, which I think the initial interview was on the release team. And so I did another round of interviews. I'm like, hey, great. So they hired me. Or actually, I'm sorry. I didn't know they hired me. I never got my letter from HR until 2 weeks before my start date. And it was only because I reached out and it was like a mailing fiasco or something where they
Oh
went to the wrong
wow.
address or I moved or my old apartment or whatever. And so they're like, hey, your start date's in 2 weeks. And so, my girlfriend at the time was like, out of all the places I applied for, she was like, I'm not moving to California. I'm from West Virginia, kind of a country guy, rural raised, same thing with my wife. She's like, I'm not going to Southern California. And I was like, well, guess what we're going to do here in 2 weeks? I can't turn this down, and I want us to stay together. So we just kind of made an impromptu decision and, uh, UPS'd all of our stuff out to us, drove across the country in 5 days, and then just started at Esri, and kind of from there, kind of was on the installation team then for 7 years, and I really liked it. I really liked all the people, and I really kind of felt it was a kind of foundational piece of understanding what Esri does. Working on the actually installable bits, kind of knowing what each product does, how they correlate to each other, and then as part of being installation and release, it was kind of like I got to play with everything. So I got to kind of be experienced with all of the kind of the full suite of products at the time. Which is then really cool is that at the towards the end of the 7 years, I was kind of working more on the server-based setup. So I was helping kind of do R&D for how to set up IIS servers, how we integrate from the software side, and then kind of working on the design for how those setups would look. And then I got pulled into at the time, Enterprise was Portal for ArcGIS, but it wasn't even a COTS product, so you couldn't even like install it. It was a zip file that professional services would then engage and everything else. And online was kind of this, very just getting started. So uh, part of my task and what I was leading on the install team was then to make Portal for ArcGIS into a real installable setup, which required all this server integration, database setup, and everything. So it really kind of laid the footwork for being an online and really understanding how the the databases work together, how they kind of worked with the UI and all these pieces, so we could basically set it up on somebody's machine or somebody's internal environment with hopefully just a click of the button and some post setup, and totally minimizing how much effort goes into what a user had to do at the time to do that. But that was the goal. Uh, and so a cool thing out of that, it was kind of like as I was tinkering that, I would take the MySQL database out of Portal and I'd turn it into a QA server to test Portal.
Oh wow,
And so like,
nice.
yeah. So I had like a UI with it would, do the testing and then the automated testing, and then would update the UI, and I stored it basically in the same MySQL tables that Enterprise was running off of at the time. So it's all really cool stuff that then, I was like, all right, I'm ready to move off the installation team. And then, I never heard of like ArcGIS Online or Jeremy Bartley or anything at that time. It was just kind of, it was so new. And so I talked to the server team who I've been working with quite a bit, like Ann Ruland and Derek Weatherby and stuff. They're like, hey, we got the perfect person we should introduce you to. This team might be something that's a fit for you. And then so now 11 years later, it
Wow.
definitely has been and stuff, and pretty tremendous. And you wouldn't think that, like I said up front, it's like installation release, not much GIS related, but it was super, it was a great opportunity to kind of be exposed to all this stuff. And that knowledge is still knowledge that I use to this day, for random things that really nobody else has been exposed to, because we're so encapsulated, removed from some of those lower tier bits, that wasn't the case at the time. So it was really cool.
That's neat because yeah, you gather all that domain knowledge. I mean, especially you're doing server installs. I mean, people have so many different setups, right? Just in like the whole 32-bit to 64-bit thing, decade, 2 decades ago, whatever that everybody did, and the nightmare that was and stuff. And yeah, Microsoft server updates and different Linux installs, and who knows what doing what, right? So that's just crazy.
Yeah, it's a ton. And just thinking about it now is kind of like, com developers and all sorts of developers have to be very knowledgeable about this stuff. So it was really kind of working on the other side of what really developers do. It just wasn't working on the functionality side.
Yeah. So how do you take some of that knowledge now? Now you're working online, and online is like it's a huge platform, right? It's not just like, oh, you go and you make a map online and publish the maps there. There's like a whole ton of like apps and products built around the whole online concept and platform stuff like that. How do you like manage like you manage MapViewer and stuff like that, but you've also got all these other people dependent on stuff you're doing. So, I mean, how does that kind of work for you?
Gosh, it feels like a lot of chaotic jazz. but ultimately work with a ton of tremendously talented, hardworking people to where, I don't think there's really any spots in online where anything or anyone or any team is micromanaged. It's kind of like we all work together, we all collaborate. And so that really kind of affords us kind of this asynchronous process where it's like, you don't have to be on top of somebody from day to day to like, hey, what's happening? It's like we can have the touch points that are, that might vary from project to project or team to team, but ultimately it's kind of like we all work together and stuff. And some things go better than others, some things are rougher than others, but ultimately it's all kind of growing experiences, learning experiences for everyone. And and it kind of helps everyone get on the same page. And it's ends up being just kind of something we all bring together and share knowledge and you know you know teaching teams and stuff on how to be good citizens in our ecosystem and everything. And and that requires kind of a lot of internal outreach, a lot of like back to knowing who the key person is, like, hey, we got this thing we need, this is a technical bit that you need to prioritize. And if you came from the top down for it, it might be lost in a lot of conversations about what does this really mean. But if you talk to the right technical people that could appreciate what this really means for them, they can help prioritize to get on the same page with what Core Online is doing, or what the JS API is doing, or whatever piece is really trying to drive whatever is being updated.
That's what I think when you hear people say this a lot about Esri, is that it's like a flat structure, right? It's not like if I need to contact someone for something in another group, I don't have to go through their manager to get contact with them. I just contact someone directly whenever I need to, right? It's not like it makes things very quick. It makes us able to get that communication done quickly and get things fixed quickly or get issues prioritized, like you said. I really like that about Esri.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's like, I think I would really struggle at a place that had a lot of like hierarchy and red tape to kind
Yeah,
of, to do a lot of things. But that also then means you have to rely on, you know, uh, kind of critical processes and structure on how things are going to come together, so that everybody has a clear understanding of like, what the kind of the operating picture is of what we need to do. And, so that's where the emphasis is rather than like this top down structure.
yeah. Like we live on GitHub Enterprise, right? Like just issues
Yeah.
after issues after issues. Like here's a link to an issue. Okay, take a look. Here's a link to another one. Check
Yep.
this one out too. Like that is like our bread and butter on the day to day, which is nuts. It's just a lot of
Yep.
stuff. But I do like to like everyone's working through a release cycle and stuff. When everyone's getting stuff done, then when it leads up to release, there's always like an email that'll go out and go, hey, all right, we're getting ready for release here, stuff people. Just so you know, these are things going in. These are things we plan to do. So let's all like work together and make sure stuff gets done, right? And there's always an email after too, like, hey, release is done. Great job. No, this and this came up, and but we got it. It's cool.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And I always trip out too because we do a ton of our own like sanity tests, right? I mean, everyone's got their own test suite and stuff, but we all like use it. Everyone jumps on our staging and QA servers, and we play around with things, but it never fails, man. Once it gets into like a user's hand, oh, this is one weird thing here. It's like, damn it. Okay, all right. We got it. We can fix it. Don't worry about it. It'll be in there tomorrow.
Yep. Yep. And that's kind of having a software as a service, or product as a service, kind of is that balance, right? Is kind of like, is you can break somebody, but you can fix them the next day. And so we put a lot of effort into not breaking somebody,
Yeah.
but if that happens, then the next day is just going to be patched and updated and stuff. But I definitely want to stress the emphasis on not breaking people, the level of discussion that goes into recognizing that so many users have mission critical applications, processes,
Yep.
services, data out there, and that they need to keep flying after the release.
Yeah, exactly. People are relying on a lot of these apps, especially like MapViewer and stuff. They're part of their critical workflows and everything. So we definitely want to make sure that everything works at a base level while we're still adding features without just like wrecking your day, right?
Yep. Um, that's cool. I'm glad though that I don't work on installations, because actually working on the cloud is much easier for doing patches in that regard. Not that it's easy, but not having actually ship patches is much better.
Oh, that's gotta be a ton of fun. So, do you get a lot of contact with all different product teams, like a dashboard or story maps and stuff like that? Like, is that easier for
Uh,
you to kind of manage?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of the same thing of what you're saying with the flat structures. Like, we have, between the teams, we have a lot of larger meetings and stuff, and a lot of coordination points. And, and there's so much it's really hard to cover at those higher level meetings. It ends up being a lot of teams coming together. So it's really kind of the higher level content. But with the flat structure is that we end up having the back channels of communications, and it may be around a specific product or a specific functionality or something. If it is like something like JSAPI update that would impact story maps, that updates impacts dashboards, then we might have more focus and strategy on what that means, what updates are necessary, and then coordinate more closely. But it's the one thing 18 years of being here at Esri has afforded is kind of like the understanding and balance of kind of like when you need that kind of that fine grain, like, hey, we have to make sure that we're on the same page for this one to
Yeah.
understand that we're all going out together versus, hey, we can have a staged release of this. It's not critical that this one goes out at this time, but we have to get this out for right here for MapViewer to kind of go ahead for a critical customer. We can't wait. So it is, those kind of conversations where that kind of stuff ends up kind of balancing. Then of course with enterprise, right? Because enterprise is then coming a release behind online, picking up everything, and so we definitely don't want to introduce issues or have issues that then enterprise has to patch afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. That's even
So it
that's
ends
even
up,
more trouble.
yeah, so there's not any one cookie cutter approach, and so it ends up being kind of varies, but it's definitely something that is focused and discussed at multiple tiers.
Yeah, it's kind of fun because when, especially like a big feature or some new features added to online, everybody's got to kind of move at the same time and add support in some way or another and stuff. So it's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it is. It's challenging and fun.
Are there any cool things coming online in 2024 that you could talk about? Maybe
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
that be ready for Dev Summit, you think?
Yes. Uh, so two I can think of, and folks may be aware of MapViewer introduced media layers earlier this year, which is a really powerful feature of being able to quickly geo-reference an image on your map and add an image and geo-reference it. But up till now, that's only been part of your map. You can't really save it out as an item. So the next powerful step we want to do for this is be able to take that media, you geo-reference it in MapViewer, but now you save it out as its own item. So now in your organization, you can have this geo-reference media that all your users have to do is just click and add to MapViewer. And now you can have this kind of one shared experience that's driven from the one media rather than everybody has to add the same one. So it's really going to be a nice kind of completing feature to the work we've been doing on media layer. And that kind of ties into stuff like we've been doing a group layer as well, a recent introduction where you can bring any number of layers together in MapViewer and then save them out as their own layer. And so it's a really, really powerful way to kind of bring together all this kind of different content into one layer. Now, I should say the group layer was already there. We'll have some more coming enhancements for that as well, but maybe that one won't be for the immediate release for this in the first quarter. The other thing I wanted to say though is this is a really cool one. Is that so? MapViewer has really had a lot of focus, with the API as well on aggregation, whether it's clustering, whether it's binning, and we hope to keep on, or we're going to keep on evolving that, and it will remain to be seen. It's kind of early if whether this happens in Q1 or Q2, but right now you can only cluster or bin on points, point geometry. But we want to expand that to both polygon and line data. So if you have, high density polygon data, parcels, maybe, super fine grained power outages, be able to aggregate them and kind of have that view that's similar to what you would have with point features with clustering or binning. And so that's going to be a really, really cool strategy for, larger data. So super excited to get that one out, and there'll be some other related enhancements coming along with aggregation, but that's going to be the coolest one out of it.
That's really cool. I can imagine that being very popular for people that are dealing with large parcel data, especially like LA
Yep.
County, which has like a ridiculous number of parcels, and would want to do some kind of like nice aggregation with that. That's very cool.
Yeah. And that's funny you say that because I have LA County parcel data with like 1.2 million parcels. I'm gonna test with that.
It is insane. I used to work with that all the time, and it's just a massive amount of data. It's like so much to work with. It would slow my ArcMap down so much sometimes.
Yep. Which
But
is really cool that we can bring this into the web, right? Who
yeah,
would have thought 10
exactly.
years ago that you could render 1.2 million parcels on a web map in your browser?
And the media layer is really cool too because I can see that being used a lot by agencies that have all these old paper maps they want to scan in, but they don't really have time to digitize them, in a nice way. So they can quickly probably have someone go through and start georeferencing them and publishing them as items and online somewhere for someone, which makes it much easier to share that data. Because right now, if you work, and this happened to me, you work at one public agency and you need old land maps or land surveyor maps from back in the day or ranchos, you had to go to Public Works and you had to ask someone to make a copy for you. So you just got to sit there and wait a good 20, 30 minutes or so, and they'll give you a copy back. And, like you take that back to the office. Now you're going to digitize that based on this info in there. Sometimes you got to pull like a dozen maps just to get one little parcel drawn because it references all these other maps and stuff, which is kind of insane too. So people that will be able to publish that data directly into online as media layer stuff is going to be very cool. I hope to see that a lot in the future. I really do.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, that'll be really cool. And it's, and it's interesting the adoption, how, how we see like how new features are really kind of brought to life by our users and their maps and content and everything. And we're just kind of starting to see that with media layer. We see a lot of folks that really grasp it right away and see it and really start using it. But it takes 6 months to a year maybe before we really kind of see it proliferate. And so we're getting to that point now with media layers. So super exciting to like see what users are doing out there.
That's gonna be awesome. I look forward to that. All right, Chris. So before I let you go, man, you got any tips, tricks, advice for listeners? Anything at all, man?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I got two things, and it's similar to what I just said about media layer, about me checking out what users are doing. Is that's what I try to carve out time every week to check out users maps. That's one of the most wonderful things about not just ArcGIS Online, not just WebGIS, but our cloud. Our cloud society now, so many maps are out there that you can see and stuff. So I spend a lot of time, or spend time every week, kind of just going through ArcGIS Online and kind of seeing what users are creating, what they're doing. And then furthermore, ArcGIS Online has authoritative content, and not just like Esri and Living Atlas, but there's a mechanism where organizations can go to Esri and say, hey, we're going to verify we are who we say we are. And then we're going to get our content that we make public. We have the opportunity to say it's authoritative with proper citations and everything else. So whenever I was in school and in early years and stuff like that, finding authoritative content and trying to cite and reference things was a lot. I called the FAA, I called the Census Bureau.
Yeah.
I was tracking down data. It was like really trying to come up with citations and references and stuff like that. But with ArcGIS Online, authoritative content is like there's so much wonderful data out there. And then as users are then using some of the cool tools, whether it is media layer, whether it is like blending and MapViewer, to really produce these awesome products. And it's just like back when at the beginning when I talked about like, hey, I wanted to do what I wanted, geography. I didn't want to do computer science or whatever else. And looking at those maps and kind of having inspiration from those maps and kind of seeing what users are doing is absolutely what I was thinking then, what I wanted to do 20 years ago.
Oh, that is awesome, Chris. That's a great advice, man. It's always useful to look at what other people are doing. Check out what the users of our stuff are doing, right? I always enjoy that. I always enjoy when people send me the work that they do with our stuff because,
Yep.
you're using it. Thank you. Thank you for using our stuff. Thank you for sharing stuff and publishing it and everything. It's great.
Yeah. First and foremost, it's really gratifying, and and it feels great that you see people that are successfully using things that you build. And then furthermore, then it's like a feedback loop of inspiration for like, hey, this is the next step we can do, or we see people are using tools in this way. How can we make it more convenient for them?
Yep, exactly. Awesome, Chris. Well, thank you very much, man. And I'll be seeing you next time.
All right, cool, Renee. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Bounding Box today. Please subscribe for more content.